In ancient Rome, the definition of time was based on 24 hours a day, 12 hours of night, and 12 hours of the day. This convention, when the duodecimal form was used, traces its origins to ancient Egypt. Much of the time, even during the equinox, daytime hours were not the same length as nighttime hours. In midwinter, for instance, daylight hours were about 45 minutes long, and in midsummer, they were about 1.5 hours long. That is why the 4 night watches were created by the Romans. The 4 night watches were named Prima Vigilia, Secunda Vigilia, Tertia Vigilia, and Quarta Vigilia. And the 4 night watches were split into 4 and each consisted of 3 hours. Time was told as seen in the figure concerning the hour of night or daylight. For instance, to indicate that it is a day or night hour, Romans use expressions such as prima die ora for the first hour of the day and prima noctis ora for the first hour of the night. The last few hours before sunrise would be referred to as the fourth watch of the night, which is quarta vigilia, and the last hour before dawn is the duodecima noctis ora. Another thing that the Romans did was the notion of the AM and the PM. The acronym AM stands for the ante-meridiem, and the PM stands for the post-meridiem, which means before midday and after midday respectively. Ancient Romans measured the time in 2 ways, first using the sun, and second using the water. They used thermorhodiohia, which means the clock. However, the word clock comes from the Latin word for bell, clocka. Horolia, meanwhile, could come into 2 ways. They may be solaria or the sundials or shadow clocks, or might be clepsydrae or the water clocks. The solaria, sometime in the 3rd century BC, solaria was apparently introduced to Rome. They were by no means ideal for telling the time as they needed latitude scale adjustment. Seasonal corrections necessary and most obviously depended on sunshine, so they could not be used at night. Maybe the most prominent solarium in ancient Rome was the one founded in the 9 BC by Emperor Augustus on the Martius campus. Basically, the Solarium Augusti was a giant sundial that used an Egyptian obelisk as the gnomon or staff of the sundial brought from Heliopolis, Egypt. This solarium was dedicated by Augustus to the sun, making it the first sun dedication in the city of Rome. In ancient Rome and throughout the empire, water clocks or clepsydra were also used. Now, they still needed seasonal adjustment, but since they did not need sunlight, they could be used at night. This made them particularly useful for holding watch hours throughout the night in military camps. Typically, the clepsydra was a vessel with holes for water outflow. It measured the time as the water filled the same way an hourglass does with sand. While the inventor of the first mechanical clock is not known, it was said in the Middle Ages that it was invented. The clock was documented in a church in Italy in 1309. The world's oldest working clock is in the Cathedral of Salisbury. It dates back to 1386 and does not have a dial. It chimes the hours instead. In churches, early clocks were usually found, and they were cumbersome because they were worked by weights. The coiled spring, however, was invented around 1450, and this made it possible for portable clocks. In the year 1510, the first watches were produced. Some rich people had clocks in their homes in the 16th century, but they were very costly. The early clocks were not very precise, but the pendulum was invented in 1657 by Christian Huygens, a Dutch physicist, mathematician, astronomer, and inventor. Even though they were still set using sundials, clocks became more precise. In 1775, the cuckoo clock was invented. In 1776, the stopwatch was invented. And in 1840, the electric clock was invented. In 1929, the quartz crystal clock was invented. And in 1955, the atomic clock was invented.